I was very surprised when my husband talked about how he was disciplined as a child when we met. He'd describe a punishment that sounds like what would be done to criminals, and then say something like, "My dad did that to me at 11 when I wet the bed." One time, he mentioned how his mom tied up his 12 years old sisters and put hot pepper in her V because she brought a male classmate to the house to study. I explained to him that was abuse. I didn't go through that, and I turned out fine. We agreed then not to raise our kids like that when we had them. I usually take the kids to visit their grandparents, both my parents and my MIL. I stay over with them whenever I visit, so there has never been any issue. Last week was my wedding anniversary, and me and my husband decided to take a trip to a resort, just the two of us to celebrate. My parents and siblings all lived in another state, and I was contemplating having my friends over to watch the kids. When my MIL heard, she asked why I would want a stranger watch her grandkids when she's alive. I was skeptical at first, but my husband convinced me to allow her. She came a day before we left and promised to take good care of them. I've raised my kids to be well-mannered, so I wasn't expecting any issue to arise. We returned home 5 days later, and when we got inside, the kids weren't in the living room. It was around 6 in the evening, and their grandmom told us they are asleep. My kids come home from school by 3:30 p.m., bath, eat, take a 30 minutes nap, do their homework, and watch TV till 9 p.m. My last-born will watch cartoon until I force her to go to bed. It was strange seeing an empty sitting room. Mama convinced me that they were willingly in bed, but my maternal instinct said otherwise. As I opened their bedroom door, I heard a gasp and then silence. I went to my baby's bed and I saw her shutting her eyes tight. She looked fearful and flinched when I touched her. I asked her, "What's wrong?" She jumped on my body and screamed "Mummy" as soon as she heard my voice and started crying. My son joined her too, and I was confused as to they were crying and thought about where their elder sister was. I initially thought they had missed me, but the tears was too much for that. Their grandma came into the room with my husband. When my son saw her, he ran to his bed and Mama started screaming at the one on my body to go to bed. My baby cried harder, saying, "Mummy, don't let her beat me." She filled me in on how Grandma has been beating them and said, "Mummy, if you see my sister." I didn't allow her finish before I quickly went to her bed. I ripped the covers off her and she was shivering and running temperature. Her menstrual flow started 2 days ago and it came when we were away. She had forgotten to dispose one of her used pad and left it in a black nylon in their bathroom. Mama discovered and called her attention to it. She apologized and went to thrash it, but the apology wasn't enough for ML. She beat her and further asked her to go outside to the compound to kneel down. She was there under sun all day till late in the evening. The next day, she had been unable to get off bed, and the younger ones went to inform Grandma. She said she was faking it. She still forced her to do chores without giving her any drug for the fever. She told her that was how her father was raised, and he didn't die, so she would be fine. I was livid upon hearing all of these. My husband saw the state she was and rushed her to the car. I took the other two to follow him, and Emil tried to stop me that it wasn't a big deal. I pushed her off me, but she wouldn't stop, so kicked her out of anger. We took my daughter to the hospital and stayed that night. We got back the next day, and Mama had left. She called her son crying the next day that I beat her up last night because she was trying to calm me down. I took the phone and called her liar, and that the only reason I didn't involve the police was because she's my MIL and that nothing must happen to my child. Not up to an hour, my husband ended the call. His sister called and said I was proud, and that is why I feel my kids are above correction. I told her that was the reason she was unable to conceive as God was trying to save the kids from her. My husband has blocked her and Mama. He said he'd realized how toxic his family was because despite that, Mama almost have our daughter Kia Chaund, she still supported her. He doesn't want us exposed to that. We are trying to decide if we should go non-contact with them, but won't that be going too far? Kindly advice.